Hey everyone, so I hope you've all been enjoying this update as much as I've been enjoying it, because personally this whole achievement weapon thing was a genuine pain to grind out these last few days. Like the weapons, the accessories, the skills, all of that was just a pain in my butt. But I did pull through and got majority of the achievements completed, with the exception of the Slayer achievement. I'd rather push this video out right now rather than grind another 15,000 kills to get it, because honestly that's completely, that's way too much. But anyways, I just want to clarify a few things before we get into this video. These titles that are being shown on the screen are obtained by completing the achievements, and the main focus of this video will be the achievement weapons, the accessories, and the skills, and methods of grinding out the current pool of achievement weapons. So I won't go in depth over builds or statistics of the weapons, since those are for you, the player. You're gonna have to figure that out on your own. Anyways, that's the end of my little talk session. Enjoy! The Firedance is a weapon that mainly focuses on its attack speed and multi-hit attacks. Using this weapon is a test of focus and timing in regards to its abilities. For the chakra and throw ability, it's going to be two individual projectiles that are thrown. When it comes into contact with an enemy, it'll slow its flight path and continuously hit the enemy for an extended period of time before exploding. If the thrown chakra comes into contact with the surface, or have been in flight for a while, they will explode. Next is the Rending Advance ability. It's a timing based move where you're going to have to press the ability a second time when the chakrams flash once. If you don't time it properly, your ability will deal less damage. Simple as that. If you're high in the air, the ability will force you downwards to the ground before activating as well. Also, when you're in your animation, you will become invulnerable for a brief period of time. Here we have the Firedance ability. It'll be a quick time event that requires you to press the buttons that appear on your screen. It's in relation to your ability buttons if you're not on mobile. This ability recharges dashes depending on how many inputs you get correct, no matter what. Also, if you don't get any inputs or all inputs were incorrect, the ability goes on cooldown and the recharge timer is 5 seconds rather than the usual 20. When using the dash attack, the enemy will become afflicted with a status effect when hit. If the attack damage is greater than 5, it'll trigger an explosion onto the enemy, damaging both the enemy and the surrounding enemies. This can be seen and activated by allies as well. Here we have the Venomtear. It's not too significant of a weapon, but it's not entirely insignificant either. It doesn't have a gimmick like the others, however it is an extremely fun weapon to use regardless of that fact. For the first ability we have Poison Cycle. It's nothing too special, you just traverse forward and spin while dealing 3 instances of damage while also gaining iframes on startup. There's no additional effects to it. Then there's Poison Injection. Your player model lunges forward and stabs into an enemy to deal continuous damage for 10 ticks of damage before releasing the enemy. This ability can be prematurely cancelled if pressed again and can execute enemies once they've reached the damage threshold. You can also use abilities and dash, however your parries will be disabled while it is active. Next up we have Tearing Burst. You throw out a projectile and deal poison damage while poisoning the enemies that are hit by it. That's it, really, that's all. The Dragonlord's Heart is the one damage-based acid weapon everyone has been asking for. Having to regulate the spear's ability usage, it has an overcharge feature that can hurt you if you're not careful. It has fairly strong abilities that weighs high risk and high reward when combining the overcharge feature with the abilities. First, there's Corrosive Burst. Using this will send a wave of acid in the direction you are facing. These waves will not overlap, meaning that they cannot hit the same enemy multiple times. Then there's Dragon Bite. You charge forward and hit a single enemy. This grants iframes during an attack, by the way. And when you hit an enemy, the user will inflict a hidden stats effect that will activate every time the enemy takes damage over 3 different times. This will stun the enemy and deal damage from a bite when it does proc. And for the final move, we have Dragonlord's Breath. This ability continuously shoots out a beam of acid multiple times to stack many corrosion stacks onto the enemy. Best used with Sharpen if you really want to. From here, we have the overcharged variants of the abilities. There isn't really much to say about these besides the fact that they get increased damage and corrosion stacks. Arc Accelerator is one of the more unique weapons. Being able to fire a magic orb from its swing allows it to have a purely ranged gameplay. When combining its abilities, it becomes a strong ranged weapon that fends for itself in terms of damage. The first ability is Accelerated Laser. Unique to this weapon currently, chaining its attack with itself allows it to ramp up in damage, becoming stronger with each blast. However, don't try to chain it after the third, because the weapon will definitely blow up on you. Mind you, this deals no damage to both the enemy and the player, so do try and be careful when spamming this ability, okay? Next is the Orbital Strike. This gives a non-stackable hidden buff to the user that allows 1 instance of damage to strike down an enemy from the sky. As you can see here, I try to buff myself as many times as possible with the Orbital Strike. However, the damage doesn't stack, nor does it constantly activate with each attack. Here we have the Accelerator drones. The user summons drones around them with limited range, and they automatically attack any nearby enemy within its range. This can be synergized with Orbital Strike as well. Everfrost is a weapon with very high potential. Having the ability to freeze and guarantee high value out of frozen enemies makes it an ideal weapon to run if you want to freeze and shatter enemies. You can almost say that it freezes a little too well. The first ability, Everfrost Slam, will slam into the ground and create little ice shards around the player. This is useless on its own, but synergizes very well with Devastating Charge. I'll get into this very soon. And here we have it, Devastating Charge. When using this ability, it forces the player to move in the direction they are facing. Ramming into an enemy will briefly stun them and deal low damage. And you will have to wait a few moments before being able to hit an enemy again with the charge. When hitting a crystal, as previously mentioned, it will send out homing ice shards to the nearest enemy, stunning them and inflicting frost stacks onto both the player and the enemy. Do be very careful, because you can freeze yourself with this synergy. The final ability is Everfrost Cleave. This ability mainly increases frost stacks the higher the charges, but it does ramp up in damage by 1 per charge. This ability allows you to parry while you're charging up the weapon, unlike other chargeable weapons. And grants brief iframes during the lunge animation, no matter the charge level. Like I stated in the beginning of the video, I've yet to obtain the Slayer achievement, so I'm only going to be covering these 4 things for now. To start us off, we have Flashstep. It's a very simple yet effective ability that increases the player's movement speed while granting them iframes for 2 seconds. Next over, there's Execute. With a whopping 60% execution threshold, it does high single target slash damage at a short range, and it can also proc execution accessories. For our accessories, we have both Mana Bracelet and Adrenaline Pack. Mana Bracelet decreases all cooldowns on parry, skills, your dodge, even your weapon abilities. Then, over at the Adrenaline Pack, it grants the user a brief speed boost and refreshes your dash cooldown. Or, if that's full already, it adds another dash charge when you take 4 or more damage. So you want to know some methods to grind out the achievement weapons. You came to the right place because, ooh, I do have some methods for you. But there are some prerequisites that'll be needed. So go ahead and write this down on your internal checklist or something. Because first of all, do you like Slime Cave? Second of all, do you like Enchanted Sword? And thirdly, do you have other friends to help you? Because 2 out of 3 of these will be mandatory in your journey to 150,000 damage. And I'll let you in on a little secret. Friends are not mandatory for this. Okay, so I'm just going to be giving statistics, weapons, and builds for this portion, so take what you will and be on your way. First is Poison. I use Enchanted Sword with Mastery Glove, Poison Necklace, and Battle Mage's Mark with Strong and Moonlight Blessing on Slime Cave. And I got runs averaging around 5 to 6 minutes and gained 4,000 damage per run. Next would be Flame, and surprisingly, Slime Cave is where it's at. Using Enchanted Sword with the exact same build, Mastery Glove, Flame Necklace, and Battle Mage's Mark with Strong and Moonlight Blessing, I averaged around 5 to 6 minutes with 4,000 damage per run. Then, much to my surprise, Frost was actually pretty efficient in Slime Cave. I personally think that Frost and Glaive or Frost Enchanted Sword would be the best thing to use since they can't inflict Frost on the normal swings or the M1s unlike every other Frost weapon in the game. Because when you freeze an enemy and hit them, it doesn't count towards your achievement progress, rather it does true damage, which isn't listed in the achievements. For the data, I got the same results as the other two, approximately 4,000 damage within the 6-ish minutes threshold. And for anyone that's wondering, I averaged around 6,000 damage in Courtyard in 9 to 10 minutes. Enchanted Sword and Frost and Glaive have the same exact melee swing speed and damage, so it doesn't really matter what you use. But Frost and Glaive has much better weapon abilities compared to Enchanted Sword, so if it's available to you at the moment, definitely use that over Enchanted Sword. As for the build, it's exactly the same as the previous two. You gotta use Mastery Glove, Frostbelt, Battle Mage Mark with Strong and Moonlight Blessing. And next up is for Acid, and I gotta be honest, this was a fairly hard one, because it took a while. Considering the lack of acid damage weapons, this one has to be the most difficult and time-consuming one. Courtyard's gonna be your go-to, and behold, Enchanted Sword will be your main weapon again. Hooray, I know, you're so excited to use Enchanted Sword, so amazing. Anyways, the build that I used was Mastery Glove, Acid Necklace, Battle Mage Mark with Strong and Moonlight Blessing. The same exact build. Nothing is changing except for the necklace, band, belt, whatever. And I averaged just about 6,000 damage in 10 to 11 minutes. Then, for magic damage, I use Arcane Spear Spellbook on Courtyard. The main build is going to be the same. Mastery Glove, Magic Band, Battle Mage Mark with Strong and Moonlight Blessing. And I averaged just about 6,000 within 9 to 10 minutes. And there you have it! And here are the final runtimes I got running unoptimized runs with the listed weapons. Happy grindings, and good luck.